You are human, which is funny. I actually had a client say that. I always thought everything was perfect in your world. And it's like, no, like it's these breakdowns that have forced me to look at these lessons and how can I learn from it to do better and then turn around and teach that to others.
Did you push record?
Thanks so much for tuning back into our second act with Paige and Silka. Today we're continuing our conversation with our new second act expert, Tami McVay. Comes to us from the Marie Cortu mentor to business and lifestyle strategist. Tami, thanks for staying with us.
Oh, I'm so excited to talk even further.
Well, it's funny because we're talking off camera and, about our next segment and how we would lead into this one. And you brought up such an interesting point that when you deal with men and women, how men and women approach, their challenges, if you will, to recreating life after 50 differently. Let's talk about that, because I think that's a really important point for both men and women to hear and perhaps learn from.
So I recently realized, I do live videos, and sometimes the topics, they're all over the place. So sometimes it'll be about self-doubt or how to stop beating yourself up. And I'll get messages from the women and they'll say, I really loved your video, or thank you, that's so inspirational. But then the men will actually ask me questions. And so I'm trying to figure out, what is it that's making the men feel safe to ask that question, and why aren't the women asking questions?
Yeah, I just find that fascinating. That's why I want to talk about that. I'm thinking, with this channel, it's programmed for women, yet we have a 70% male audience, and a lot of them do ask questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so my audience is similar. I'm at 40% male. Mm-hmm. And for me anyways, I think part of it is that being a Marine, there's that strength and instant respect that comes with that. But then they also see my feminine side, where I'm soft and I'm kind and I'm a good listener. And so I think a lot of men, they're drawn to that strength, and then they feel safe with sharing because of it. And on the flip side, I think that the strength intimidates some women. And so I don't know if it's just they're afraid to show that, I'm just not as strong as her, but I really like what she's saying. And I also think that women need to process the information a little bit longer. So maybe what I said struck a chord, but they have to stew on it.
Yeah. And see, it's so important for me to really help women in that regard, that, confidence is such a big topic, especially after 50. We just did recent videos on that as well, just how your confidence just drops for some reason after 51. That was what the study said. And that's a time when really there should be more. We've acquired so much wisdom, so much knowledge.
I really think that that really looking at your life experiences and all the different things that you've overcome, these obstacles, when maybe at the time you felt like totally broken, especially if you went through divorce or something like that, and then to realize how resilient you really are, that you made it through that. And so whatever it is that you're going through right now, maybe it's not nearly as bad as you're making up those stories in your head. And so just to remind yourself, I'm stronger than ever. And, you keep pushing through and getting around. I think your network is so valuable, because you need to get around people that can see these gifts in you and keep bringing that up and out of you.
Every day is a learning experience for me, and somehow this whole channel has been cathartic in talking to wonderful people like you. But what about you, Tami? What has been challenging that other women could identify with? What are your struggles? Do you ever cry at night?
Absolutely. And I think that that's one thing that I've had to get more comfortable with, is being vulnerable, especially in the online space. You feel like everybody's watching when you first start, nobody's paying attention. But it's that transparency and that vulnerability that all of a sudden, those are the stories we connect on. And I struggled with it for a long time, because as a Marine, I can shut down my emotions, put on a poker face, and push through. And I started to realize, in my relationships, that things like that, it was starting to hinder because I wasn't really expressing how I was feeling. And so as I've struggled as an entrepreneur in the online space, like I've talked about that as well. And so I think that, people realize like you are human, which is funny. I actually had a client say that I always thought everything was perfect in your world. And it's like, no, like it's these breakdowns that have forced me to look at these lessons and how can I learn from it to do better and then turn around and teach that to others.
No, and I appreciate that, because that's one thing Paige and I talk about a lot, is that there's so many people now in this online space, telling everybody, it seems like everybody's a coach now. And we probably can be, because we do have wisdom that we bring to the table, et cetera, et cetera. But there is something about it's not always perfect. And I think people need to hear that too. So, because that in and of itself, to me, gives me confidence that, okay, I don't have to be perfect all the time.
Yep. And like as that confidence builds, then you feel more comfortable. Like I'll go live sometimes, I've been live in Mexico and my hair was all crazy, frizzy, and so you start to get more comfortable, like you don't have to be all polished all the time, and you can have those rough days.
Well, and I think that's the other thing we talked about. We're kind of going all over in this segment a little bit, but that's okay. Is when you do reinvent, when you do recreate your life and take that step, that one of the important things is to keep learning and growing. I think you called it the underrated fountain of youth.
Yes, absolutely. And it was something that I didn't really appreciate until I became an online entrepreneur, just because I didn't know anything about sales and marketing and social media and all that. So I had to learn all these things. But it was very different from my corporate job, where I had to like learn a new system or learn, different software languages, versus all of a sudden something that I'm like, hey, video seems cool. Let me learn about video, so all of a sudden I started to light up, and then I just got hungry for more and more information. And I forgot how much I thrive when I learn.
Well, and asking questions is part of that. That's how you learn, is by asking questions and getting answers. And it kind of takes us back to the beginning of the segment with your observation with the difference between men and women. And I remember that too, even in school. It seemed like men and boys asked more questions than girls did. And maybe that's something we need to look at more closely, is not be afraid to ask for help, to ask for knowledge, and guidance. We are coming to the end of this segment now again too. Tami, what words of wisdom do you have to leave us here?
Well, I really think that there's a lot of science to back up the power of learning. And as you get older and you start to get set in your ways, I know we have a lot of habits like that just really, that learning and growing just keeps you fresh. It keeps you relevant. And there's really a lot of power in that.
Yeah, no, that's good point. So leave us your questions. If you have questions for Tami, questions in general, leave it in the comments. We will link to all of Tami's information, and she has some exciting stuff coming up. So we'll see you next time on Our Second Act with Paige and Silka. If you haven't already done so, please be sure to subscribe to our channel. The button's right over here. And as you click through to YouTube, there's a little bell right next to the subscribe button as well. Hit that and you'll be notified every time we post a new video. And be sure to visit our website, secondact.tv, for all kinds of videos on living your life to the fullest after 50. See you soon.